The dark-haired student stands with a basketball, impatient for the lunch break to finally end. His friend, frantic and sweating, scribbles furiously to finish his work before the bell rings. Watching the chaotic scribbling, the boy realizes his friend isn't solving math, he's just vibrating his hand. Giving up on the court, the basketball player decides it's too freezing outside anyway. He rests his head on the ball, complaining that the term cold snap doesn't capture the misery. His friend asks for a better name, and the boy suggests something that sounds properly twisted. He brings up the traditional term kotsamchui, claiming the meaning is actually brutal. He explains the folklore, saying the sky gets angry when the spring flowers try to bloom. The glasses-wearing student pauses, wondering if the sky has serious anger management issues. Correcting himself, the boy explains it's actually jealousy that drives the sky to freeze the flowers to death. When asked for his source, he stammers about a book, clearly trying to hide that he learned it from YouTube. As he smiles about the poetic cruelty, the narration wonders if beauty is what invites destruction. His friend finally finishes the work, oblivious to the heavy question hanging in the air. Looking out the window, they realize the break is over, and their chance to play is gone. A black screen asks a chilling question. Why were they the ones chosen to be taken? Back in the classroom, the teacher nurses a sore back and assigns self-study to the bored students. The boy who rushed his homework collapses in defeat, regretting every second he didn't spend on the court. Nearby, a blonde student rummages through her purple backpack, realizing something is missing. She tells the glasses boy, Hongjin, that a photo she placed in her desk yesterday has vanished. Hongjin looks baffled, unable to imagine why anyone would bother stealing a picture. She immediately suspects another student named Kim Eason, accusing Hongjin of letting her near the desk. The dark-haired boy checks his phone, ignoring the drama about the girl from the other class. Their argument gets loud enough for the teacher to mock them as a bickering couple. The teacher orders them to shut up and sleep if they aren't going to study like the others. Hongjin sits in awkward silence, face burning from the public embarrassment. The narrative emphasizes the absolute normalcy of the moment, a day just like any other. But then Hongjin's expression shifts from embarrassment to sudden confusion. The text reiterates that this tranquility was supposed to last, but fate had other plans. Outside the window, strange black columns of debris begin to fall from the sky, confusing the students. Terrified by what he sees, Hongjin desperately taps the girl's shoulder to make her look. A blinding white light suddenly detonates in the classroom, forcing every student to shield their eyes from the glare. As the brilliance fades, the students lower their arms, blinking away the spots in their vision in total confusion. One student stares in open-mouthed shock, while another desperately signals for absolute silence to figure out what happened. The teacher, still rattled, tries to regain composure while the class murmurs about the blinding flash. Panic sets in as students rush to the windows, wondering if a bomb just went off nearby or if war has started. Down on the soccer field, a grotesque, fleshy mound sits ominously in the center of the pitch. It looks like a nightmare taking root, a pulsating organic mass opening like a flower made of sharp teeth. The students recoil in disgust, unable to process the horrific biological anomaly sitting on their school grounds. The teacher, abandoning all curiosity, screams at the class to sit down and ignore the monstrosity outside. But his authority wavers as he stares at his phone, sweating profusely like a man realizing his data plan just expired. His messages aren't going through, the digital lifeline to the outside world completely severed. Hongjin and the blonde girl are shoved aside as classmates crowd the glass, theorizing it's an alien invasion. Hongjin steps back with a look of annoyance, clearly not interested in fighting for a view of the apocalypse. While everyone focuses outside, a girl notices a strange black sphere silently materializing on the classroom ceiling. The object hovers with impossible stillness, a void of pure darkness defying gravity right above their heads. Hongjin and the girl freeze, their attention shifting from the window to the ominous anomaly inside the room. The teacher decides to lead by example, which in this case means fleeing to the office and leaving the kids behind. Amidst the chaos, one student sits paralyzed, his hand trembling so violently he can barely hold his pen. A concerned classmate checks on the trembling girl, Kim Sujin, who is shivering as if freezing to death. He leans in closer and recoils, realizing her skin has turned a deathly, unnatural shade of gray. She mutters about her mother in the cold, completely unresponsive to his desperate attempts to snap her out of it. Hongjin suddenly lunges forward, grabbing the boy, Choi Jungsu, and yanking him back with urgent force. Jungsu tries to argue that she needs a nurse, oblivious to the black sphere drifting dangerously close to her. A sudden crackle of energy freezes him in place as the sphere begins to react to the girl's presence. The sphere emits a strange sound as cracks begin to spiderweb across Sujin's face like broken porcelain. Jungsu screams in pure terror, backing away as his classmate transforms into something unrecognizable. The other students can only watch in paralyzed horror as the black sphere seems to merge with her. The sound of tearing flesh fills the silent room as her jaw unhinges, splitting far beyond human limits. In a gruesome display, her entire head splits open, revealing a nightmare of writhing muscle and teeth beneath. Hongjin stares into the face of the impossible, his mind unable to comprehend the monster standing where a student used to be. The blonde student collapses to the floor, her legs turning to jelly as the shadow engulfs her. The rest of the class stands frozen, their brains frantically trying to reject the reality before them. A massive gray hand slams onto a desk, snapping the wood like a toothpick. Sujin is gone, replaced by a towering gray nightmare with a vertical jaw and a floating void above its head. The creature emits a strange, mechanical sound, the black sphere pulsing with ominous energy. Hongjin and the others hold their breath, hoping that if they don't move, they don't exist. But naturally, someone has to ruin the stealth mission, and a book clatters loudly to the floor. The sound acts like a dinner bell, instantly snapping the creature's attention toward the terrified group. Panic finally overrides the shock, and the classroom explodes into a chaotic stampede. Survival instinct kicks in, which apparently involves punching your best friend to get to the door first. In the violent scuffle, Hongjin loses his glasses, his world blurring into a smudge of fear. Through the haze, he spots the blonde girl still on the floor, completely paralyzed by terror. He rushes to her side, realizing she isn't injured, just unable to command her own legs. Sweat pours down his face as he realizes the situation has gone from bad to absolutely catastrophic. Another student shoves past them, screaming for salvation, while using his classmates as human shields. The creature lashes out, a long, shadow-like appendage whipping through the air. Students flood the hallway, screaming for teachers who have long since abandoned them. A sharp black spike erupts from the chaos, piercing a fleeing student mid-stride. He freezes, the realization of his own mortality hitting him a split second before the pain does. The monster dominates the room, a towering avatar of death amidst the scattered desks. One unlucky student is snagged by the leg, his screams echoing as he's yanked into the air. Those trapped inside can only cower, shielding their eyes from the slaughter unfolding inches away. The hallway becomes a bottleneck of desperation, bodies piling up in a frantic bid for freedom. Back in the classroom, the captured boy is hoisted high, dangling helplessly upside down. The monster holds him there, emitting that same strange sound as if savoring the catch. It positions the struggling victim directly above its vertical, tooth-filled maw. Hongjin drags the blonde girl into cover, desperately trying to shield her from the gruesome sight. But he can't look away, his eyes wide with a trauma that is permanently etching itself into his mind. The boy is lowered into the creature's body, sinking into the fleshy mass like quicksand. The black sphere drips a dark, viscous fluid onto his face, sealing his fate in the most horrific way possible. The black sphere completes its grim work, absorbing the unfortunate student's essence into its void. With a violent jerk, the creature discards the body, tossing the empty vessel aside like a broken toy. The monstrosity swallows the energy it harvested, perching atop the desks like a vulture waiting for seconds. Beneath the furniture, Hongjin and the blonde girl tremble, praying their silence renders them invisible. The creature pauses, its senses overwhelmed by the distant screams and futile calls for police that will never come. Hongjin clamps a hand over the girl's mouth, knowing a single whimper would be their death sentence. A strange guttural sound escapes the beast as the black sphere hovers ominously above its severed neck. Its head snaps around with mechanical precision, scanning the room for any remaining signs of life. Elsewhere in the building, the ceiling vibrates with the heavy, rhythmic thuds of the chaos unfolding above. In the boys' bathroom, a buzz-cut student stares upward, unnerved by the structural groans of the dying school. Beside him, a gray-haired student smokes casually by the window, treating the apocalypse like a mild inconvenience. With a twisted grin, the smoker offers cash to his companion, daring him to go touch the nightmare outside. The buzz-cut boy recoils in disbelief, refusing to sell his life for a handful of pocket change. The gray-haired boy laughs it off as a joke, though his eyes hold a glint of genuine madness. Down on the field, the massive tooth-filled mound sits in silence, a dormant volcano of flesh. The smoker's laughter fades into a thoughtful pause as a cruel idea begins to take shape. A sinister smile spreads across his face, the kind that suggests he's far more dangerous than the monsters outside. He glances down at a battered student lying unconscious on the tiles, a victim of their earlier bullying. He orders his lackey to wake the unconscious boy, deciding that he has found a use for him after all. When asked why, he simply claims he needs to satisfy his innocent curiosity about the creature below. Moments later, a pair of hesitant feet step onto the grass, forced into a march toward doom. The battered student Cheolman stumbles forward with a red blindfold, unaware of the horror waiting ahead. From the safety of the balcony, the bullies direct him like a remote-controlled toy, threatening death if he stops. The gray-haired tormentor chuckles, amused by how obediently his victim walks toward his own execution. His companion films the scene, sweating nervously as he wonders if their cruelty will invite karma. Cheolman draws closer to the pulsating mound, the massive jaws looming silently over his small frame. The smoker sighs with disappointment, annoyed that the monster isn't reacting to the bait immediately. His eyes widen with anticipation as he orders the cameraman to keep the lens steady for the main event. The footsteps continue through the grass, each one bringing the blindfolded boy deeper into the danger zone. Suddenly, Cheolman stops, clutching his broken ribs and pleading that his body can no longer support him. Cheolman trembles beneath the blindfold, forcing himself to focus on the twisted logic of his survival. Standing in the shadow of the pulsating mound, he decides that facing a monster is still better than facing his bullies. Back in the classroom, the silence is heavy as Hong Jin and the blonde girl hide beneath the wreckage. The creature's head begins to detach, a black sphere floating ominously from its severed neck. It emits a strange, rhythmic sound, the cage of teeth twitching with unnatural life as it scans the room. Hong Jin stares in horror, realizing that their hiding spot has become a trap. The headless monstrosity crawls atop the desks, its movements jerky and searching. Realizing they've been spotted, Hong Jin grabs the girl and screams for her to run. A massive black appendage smashes down, pulverizing the desk they were hiding under a second ago. The creature's limbs snap the furniture like twigs, its strength far beyond anything human. It crashes to the floor in a frenzy, thrashing around in a violent attempt to catch its prey. A sharp spike of darkness erupts through the wall, narrowly missing Hong Jin as he scrambles away. Debris flies past his face, the shock of the near miss momentarily stunning him. Dust clouds the room, obscuring the monster but doing nothing to dampen the danger. Hong Jin urges the girl to keep moving, but the terror is rapidly taking its toll on her. She collapses against the wall, sobbing for her mother and shaking uncontrollably. Hong Jin kneels beside her, realizing with a sinking heart that she has completely shut down. A sound from behind freezes him, and he turns to see that their time has officially run out. The creature is crawling over the desks again, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Hong Jin's mind races, calculating the impossible odds of both of them making it out alive. Looking at the paralyzed girl, a dark and pragmatic realization begins to form in his mind. He makes a split-second decision and bolts in the opposite direction, leaving her alone on the floor. The girl is left weeping, too consumed by fear to even register that she has been abandoned. The gray nightmare looms over her small form, a towering shadow of teeth and death. She finally looks up and lets out a blood-curdling scream as the monster descends upon her. Meanwhile, a gym teacher marches down the hall, annoyed by the noise and completely oblivious to the apocalypse. He grips a baseball bat, ready to discipline students for what he assumes is just a rebellious prank. A student points in terror at the window, screaming at the teacher to look behind him. The teacher turns to scold them, just as a black spike shoots through the door and strikes him. Shock replaces anger on his face as he realizes too late that detention won't solve this problem. The creature rampages through the classroom, its presence alone enough to send the survivors into a frenzy. The blonde girl collapses on the floor, her mind shattering as she sobs uncontrollably for her mother. Her screams echo uselessly against the walls, drowning out the sound of the slaughter happening around her. Tears stream down her face as the primal, overwhelming fear of death completely takes over her senses. Just as she gives up, a firm hand clamps around her wrist, snapping her back to the immediate reality. It's Hong Jin, dragging her dead weight across the floor while complaining that she's heavier than she looks. He pulls her into the shadows, and she tearfully demands to know where he disappeared to during the chaos. Nearby, the gym teacher lies motionless on the tiles, his baseball bat proving useless against a monster that defies physics. The creature forces its massive frame through the doorway, its limbs cracking against the frame as it hunts. It casually discards the remains of its last victim, clearing its claws for the next target. The gray nightmare steps fully into the room, its black sphere pulsing with a hunger for more. It stalks through the wreckage of the classroom, overturning desks with terrifying ease as it searches for survivors. The heavy footsteps draw closer to a tall cleaning locker standing innocuously in the corner. Inside, Hong Jin and the girl are crammed together among the mops, holding their breath in the cramped darkness. The girl starts to hyperventilate, asking what they should do as the monster prowls just inches away. Even in this situation, she finds the energy to accuse him of trying to abandon her earlier. Hong Jin shuts her down immediately, pointing out that he's literally right there saving her life, so maybe she should hush. Trying to calm the mood, he promises to buy her snacks every day until graduation if they make it out alive. She argues that she should be the one buying since he saved her, proving that debt logic still applies during an apocalypse. Outside the thin wooden doors, the classroom falls into a terrifying, heavy silence. A long gray hand slides silently across the floorboards, creeping dangerously close to their hiding spot. The girl whispers, hoping the monster has left, and Hong Jin suggests checking the coast. Unbeknownst to them, the creature is crouching right there in the room, waiting like a trap ready to spring. Hong Jin slowly reaches out to push the locker door open just a crack to peek outside. He freezes mid-motion, a sudden instinct screaming at him to stop immediately. The creature hasn't left. It is standing perfectly still, listening for the slightest movement. Through the tiny gap in the door, the black sphere and rows of teeth are staring right back at them. Hong Jin's hand trembles against the wood as he realizes they are trapped in a vertical coffin. Cold sweat pours down his face as the reality of their situation crashes down on him. He understands the grim math: stay inside and die or go outside and die faster. Hong Jin sits huddled in the dark, his mind racing with the terrifying certainty that they are trapped with no way out. A sudden silence falls and he looks up, sweat stinging his eyes as he strains to hear the monster's breath. He risks a glance through the vent, expecting death, but sees only the empty floorboards where the beast once stood. His eyes widen in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a creature of that size could vanish without a sound. The hallway outside appears completely deserted, the massive threat having seemingly evaporated into thin air. His hand trembles as the adrenaline crashes, his mind daring to hope that the monster actually lost interest. But then, a bizarre rhythmic gibberish fills the locker, a sound so alien it feels like it's vibrating inside their skulls. The blonde girl's psyche shatters, and she screams in pure terror as the maddening noise overwhelms her. Hong Jin joins her in a desperate cry, clutching his head as the auditory torture signals their location to anything listening. Outside, the school stands deceptively peaceful under the bright afternoon sun, a silent tomb for those trapped within. The tranquility is violently shattered as the third-floor wall explodes outward, spewing debris and dust into the air. Down on the soccer field, a pair of hesitant feet shuffle through the grass, oblivious to the destruction raining from above. Cheolman, blindfolded and in pain, stands unknowingly before the dormant mountain of flesh, a sacrificial lamb for his bullies. His hand brushes against the creature's side, the cold, unnatural texture confusing his deprived senses. He recoils with a curse, terrified by the strange surface but still unaware he's touching a nightmare. On the balcony, the bullies erupt in laughter, thrilled that their puppet actually made contact with the beast. Cheolman yells in confusion, a lone figure providing twisted entertainment for the sociopaths watching from safety. The gray-haired ringleader grins, ordering his cameramen to keep rolling so they don't miss the moment of realization. He shouts down to the field, mocking Cheolman to take off the blindfold if he's so curious about what he touched. But his laughter dies in his throat as the thunderous sound of the wall collapsing finally reaches his ears. The bully's smirk vanishes, replaced by genuine confusion as he looks away from his victim to the source of the noise. A massive hole has been blown open in the side of the building, smoke billowing out like a fresh wound in the school's facade. Cheolman, sensing the shift in atmosphere, reaches for his blindfold with trembling hands, ready to face reality. He rips the fabric away and freezes, his brain short-circuiting as he stares up at the wall of teeth looming over him. Suddenly, a colossal black spike plummets from the exploding classroom, crashing down toward the field with earth-shattering force. The red blindfold is whipped away by the shockwave, a small piece of fabric lost in the violence of the impact. The gray-haired bully grips the railing, his face draining of color as he realizes the game has turned into a massacre. Inside a safe classroom, students crowd the windows, gawking at the monster with a mix of disgust and morbid curiosity. The creature on the field begins to writhe and open its maw, agitated by the sudden arrival of a challenger from the sky. Amidst the chaos, a sharp-eyed girl points at the dust cloud, realizing with horror that a person has fallen with the debris. Spectators in the windows gasp, unable to believe someone is actually standing before the abomination. Whispers ripple through the glass, questioning the sanity of the boy walking voluntarily toward death. Cheolman makes contact, his hand pressing against the mound as the school watches in collective disbelief. The students' faces twist in horror, their minds unable to process the suicidal bravery they are witnessing. A pupil dilates in sudden terror, catching sight of something descending rapidly from above. The view from the classroom shifts as the gray nightmare plummets past the window, taking the wall with it. Gravity claims the monster, dragging it down in a whirlwind of debris and shattered masonry. On the ground, Cheolman removes his blindfold, unaware that the real threat has just landed behind him. His eyes bulge as the sensory deprivation ends, replaced immediately by a visual overload of terror. A massive spike of energy crashes down, creating a shockwave that announces the monster's arrival on the pitch. Students lean dangerously close to the broken windows, witnessing a clash of titans in their own schoolyard. Hands fly to mouths to stifle screams as the scale of the disaster becomes undeniably clear. The gray creature rises from the dust, emitting a chilling, laughter-like sound as its black sphere pulses. Inside the building, the thin veneer of order snaps, and the hallway dissolves into a cacophony of panic. The monster crouches on the lawn, a predator momentarily confused by the sudden change in environment. A teacher screams at the frozen students to run, his authority barely audible over the stampede. Back in the cleaning locker, the dust settles to reveal that their hiding spot has lost its fourth wall. Hongjin and the blonde girl sit exposed to the open sky, stunned that they aren't dead yet. The girl breaks down, the adrenaline crash leaving her weeping and shaking in the wreckage. Hongjin stares out at the void where the classroom wall used to be, processing their miraculous survival. He crawls to the jagged edge, needing to confirm exactly where their hunter has landed. Peering down from their precarious perch, he spots the gray nightmare sitting on the soccer field. The creature sits motionless, a statue of flesh and teeth amidst the green grass. Behind them, the classroom erupts into chaos as surviving students trample each other to reach the exit. The blonde girl looks to Hongjin for guidance, her trust in him now absolute after their near-death experience. Hongjin hesitates, knowing that the monster is outside, but the building is becoming a death trap. He grabs her shoulder, deciding that staying in a crumbling room is not a viable survival strategy. But as he stands, a paralyzing realization hits him. There is nowhere safe left to go. The girl suggests the outdoors, her desperation making her forget what is waiting on the lawn. Hongjin looks down at the silent beast, knowing that escaping the building means walking directly into the lion's den. The hallway is a blur of motion as the rest of the student body stampedes toward an unknown destination. Hongjin observes the panic, realizing that logic has left the building along with their courage. A familiar face steps out of the chaos, suggesting a detour to the faculty office to retrieve their confiscated lifelines. It's Kim Is-sin, the dark-haired student from earlier, wearing a smile that feels a bit too casual for the apocalypse. He asks about the destruction in their classroom, while Hongjin counters with a demand to know why he's wandering around.
Is-sin claims he was just checking on his bro, but his attention quickly shifts to the origin of the nightmare on the field.
The revelation that the fleshy mound used to be a classmate hits him hard, wiping the smirk right off his face. Hongjin steers the conversation back to practical matters, asking if Is-sin already checked the office for phones. Is-sin pulls out his device to demonstrate the problem, revealing that the digital world has gone completely dark. Hongjin demands answers that no one has, his frustration mounting as their options dwindle. They look down at the creature on the pitch, wondering if its presence is acting like a massive EMP. Is-sin suggests hunkering down, confident that the authorities are already en route to save the day. The blonde girl asks for a destination, her mind racing through the layout of the school for a fortress. Naturally, group coordination is at an all-time low, as they simultaneously shout out 3 completely different locations. An awkward silence falls over the trio as they realize their survival committee is already dysfunctional. Is-sin looks at them with disbelief, arguing that their suggestions are about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Hongjin insists on the auditorium, trying to take charge before they get eaten while debating logistics. Is-sin shuts them down, pointing out that this might not be a quick afternoon drill but a long-term siege. He argues for the cafeteria to secure food supplies, while Hongjin optimistically believes the army will be there by dinner. Hongjin points to the gaping hole in the wall, arguing that structural integrity is slightly more important than snacks right now. The girl finally snaps, interrupting their bickering to question their entire defensive strategy. She argues that hiding is pointless, and they should position themselves to be seen by the rescue teams. She rubs her temples, explaining that in the modern era, help doesn't just walk through the front gate. Is-sin considers her point, realizing that a helicopter extraction is the most likely scenario for a disaster of this scale. She gestures to the devastation around them, reasoning that if this doesn't qualify for air support, nothing does. Hongjin's expression shifts as the logic sinks in, realizing the rooftop is their best ticket out of here. Aizen quickly pivots, agreeing that the roof beats the cafeteria, mostly because he just wants to stop arguing. With the plan set, the girl turns to lead the way, but her body suddenly betrays her. Hongjin catches her before she hits the floor, his reflexes still sharp despite the exhaustion. She admits that her legs have turned to jelly again, the lingering terror making simple movement a struggle. The blonde girl stands frozen, her breath hitching as the adrenaline begins to fade. Hongjin checks on her, his voice tight with worry as he asks if her legs still work. She grips his arm for support, feeling the violent tremors running through his muscles. The realization hits her that despite his brave front, he is just as terrified as she is. Forcing a mask of courage, she insists she can walk, refusing to be a burden in the apocalypse. Through the shattered wall, the schoolyard lies silent, the gray nightmare sitting dormant on the grass. They scramble up the stairwell, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty concrete shaft. Panic rises as they debate if the roof is even accessible, with Hongjin banking on the delinquent's smoking habits. Eason takes offense to the implication, asking if Hongjin just assumed he was a smoker based on vibes. They rush the final flight, praying the door isn't locked, which would turn this stairwell into a dead end.
Eason starts to deny the smoker allegation again, but his protest is cut short by a stroke of luck.
The door stands unbarred, the lock already picked by someone who beat them to the sanctuary. A hand pushes the handle, the metal mechanism clicking open with a sound of pure relief. They burst into the open air, lungs gasping for the fresh breeze of the rooftop. The roof is already occupied, a grim gathering of survivors standing in silent, fearful clusters. The gray-haired bully turns, his eyes narrowing as he recognizes Eason arriving with the new group. Other students bicker in hushed tones, their nerves frayed to the breaking point by the waiting game. Hongjin scans the crowd, realizing that the helicopter extraction idea wasn't exactly a unique thought. Eason notes the pallor on everyone's faces, the heavy atmosphere of dread weighing down the rooftop. Hongjin curses under his breath, sensing the shift in the atmosphere before he even sees the cause. Eason stares at his feet, muttering that their situation has just downgraded from bad to fatal. The blonde girl demands an explanation, tired of the cryptic doom-mongering while they're trying to survive. Eason turns his back to them, stating with grim finality that the rescue team isn't coming. He raises a trembling finger, pointing not at the school grounds, but out toward the city. In the distance, plumes of smoke rise from the urban landscape, signaling widespread chaos. Perched atop a distant skyscraper, another massive, tooth-filled silhouette roars into the sky. The students stare in paralyzed horror, realizing the monster below wasn't a freak accident, but an invasion. Eason collapses into a squat, the crushing reality that there is no help coming finally breaking his composure. Nearby, a lone student huddles on the floor, sobbing about being left behind by his friends. He shivers violently in the cold, while the new arrivals look down at him with a mix of pity and confusion. The sobbing student on the floor refuses to look up, demanding the nightmare to end right now. But reality doesn't care about his denial, peering over the edge of the adjacent building with a grotesque, toothy grin. The blonde girl and Hongjin freeze, their eyes locking onto the impossible sight across the gap. Hongjin grips the railing until his knuckles turn white, his brain struggling to process the sheer scale of the disaster. Eason points out the grim irony that the current silence is actually an improvement over the chaos from moments ago. The word chaos hangs heavy in the air, triggering a cold sweat as Hongjin focuses his gaze. Through the shattered glass facade of the office building opposite them, a lone figure lies motionless in the wreckage. The office worker is clearly beyond help, a dark, fatal wound in his chest marking the end of his shift permanently. But even death offers no sanctuary here, as a massive gray hand descends from the ceiling like a spider. The limb snatches the corpse with terrifying speed, treating a human life like a discarded snack. In a blink, the body is yanked upward into the darkness, vanishing into the monster's lair above the ceiling tiles. Only a smear of darkness remains on the floor, a grim signature of the predator hiding in the office. Hongjin watches the abduction in paralyzed silence, his mind reeling from the casual brutality of the act. A terrifying realization hits him. If the office buildings are hunting grounds, then their homes are likely slaughterhouses too. The blonde girl steps up beside him, her voice trembling as she desperately seeks a reassurance he can't give. He can't even look her in the eye, wondering why their specific slice of the world was chosen for this hell. He stares out at the silent city, terrified by the thought that this might not be a local incident, but a global extinction event. Eason cuts through the spiraling panic, dismissing the doomsday theories with aggressive denial to keep them focused. The gray-haired delinquent steps in, threatening to add murder to the list of today's events if they don't stop spreading fear. The group turns to face the new threat, realizing the monsters aren't the only danger on the roof. The bully crosses the line immediately, grabbing the girl by the head and offering her up as monster bait. Hongjin watches in shock as the girl struggles, her fear momentarily replaced by pure indignation at being manhandled. A cruel smirk plays on the bully's face as he raises a hand, ready to discipline her for resisting his tyranny. But the blow never lands, intercepted mid-air by a hand that moves faster than the bully expected. Hongjin's jaw drops, stunned that someone actually dared to physically intervene against the school's apex predator. The girl collapses to the ground in shock, clutching her face as if the phantom pain of the slap already hit her. She looks up in confusion, realizing she hasn't been struck and wondering who just saved her. Eason stands as a barrier between them, casually asking the psychopath to repeat himself. Hongjin finally finds his legs, rushing forward to shield the girl and desperately trying to de-escalate the situation. The bully laughs off the interference, amused that Eason's lackey is volunteering to be the next punching bag. Hongjin stammers in shock, stunned that someone actually intervened to stop the violence. A girl in a gray hoodie steps past the trembling victim, her demeanor unnervingly calm given the circumstances. She stands between the bully and the blonde girl, while another male student nervously backs her up. The gray-haired bully scratches his head, genuinely baffled that a first year has the audacity to speak to him. She points out the absurdity of playing gang wars when a student just died in front of the entire school. The bully's face twists with irritation, accusing the new arrivals of sharing a collective delusion about the situation. The male student tries to support her, asking the bully if he has any shred of decency left. The bully leans in close, using his height and reputation to suffocate the sudden rebellion. On the floor, Hongjin and the blonde girl watch the power struggle, realizing this is the worst possible time for ego battles. Hongjin clutches his head, the stress of the apocalypse compounding with the stupidity of high school politics. The argument is cut short as the murmurs of the crowd shift toward a new anomaly appearing in the sky. A familiar black sphere hovers silently above them, a dark period at the end of their sentence. Hongjin and the blonde girl freeze, recognizing the harbinger of doom that destroyed their classroom. The memory of the transformation flashes through Hongjin's mind, the sphere, the cracks, and the birth of the monster. Cold sweat drenches him as he connects the dots. The sphere isn't just debris, it's a catalyst. The black object begins to hum, emitting the same frequency that signaled the previous slaughter. Abandoning all social awkwardness, Hongjin screams at the group to move immediately. Eason and the bully pause, looking at him like he's the one who's lost his mind. Hongjin bellows the terrifying truth. That sphere means someone on this roof is about to become a monster. The standoff on the roof instantly shifts from a bullying circle to a potential kill zone. The girl in the hoodie freezes, the urgency in Hongjin's voice cutting through her composure. The bully bursts into laughter, finding the idea of spontaneous monsterfication absolutely hilarious. But Eason isn't laughing. He sees the terror in his friend's eyes and knows it's real. Hongjin points to the horror below, revealing that the thing in the yard used to be a student named Kim Soo-jin. That's all the confirmation Eason needs, and he bolts instantly, leaving the skeptics behind. Hongjin grabs the blonde girl again, dragging her into a sprint while promising explanations later. The hoodie girl and her defender realize that survival is a group activity and scramble to follow. But the bully steps into their path, his ego refusing to let his audience leave so easily. A twisted grin spreads across his face as he blocks the exit, finding their panic amusingly rude. The girl stares him down, silent and unimpressed, knowing that his stupidity is about to get them all killed. The bully clenches his fist, furious that his authority is being challenged by a nerd. But his ego trip is cut short as a blood-curdling scream erupts from the students behind him. The sobbing boy on the ground has gone silent, a black sphere hovering ominously above his head. His face begins to crack like porcelain, the repeated muttering signaling that his humanity has left the chat. Hongjin screams at the top of his lungs, knowing exactly what kind of nightmare is about to be born. Eason reacts instantly, abandoning the standoff to lunge for the only exit on the roof. He throws the door open, desperate to secure a path before the slaughter begins. He pauses for a split second, looking back to ensure his friends aren't already dead. The bullies finally turn around, their arrogance vanishing as the sound of snapping bones fills the air. Eason watches in horror as the student transforms, expanding into a grotesque shape that defies biology. A massive gray hand slams down, pinning a student to the concrete with sickening force. The sobbing boy is gone, replaced by a towering, lanky monstrosity with a vertical mouth and a hunger for violence. The realization hits the students like a truck. They are trapped in a cage with a tiger. Eason screams for Hongjin, his voice cracking with desperation as the roof descends into chaos. Hongjin is already sprinting, his face contorted with the effort of outrunning death itself. Eason holds the door open, acting as a living doorstop for the terrified stampede. Students flood past him, a chaotic wave of uniforms desperate to put a wall between them and the beast. Eason struggles to keep his footing, nearly swept away by the panic of his classmates. He scans the crowd frantically, shouting Hongjin's name and refusing to retreat without him. Hongjin appears through the crowd, shepherding the blonde girl and the hoodie student toward the exit. He risks a glance over his shoulder, watching as the monster's massive limb crashes down near the doorway. One of the bully's lackeys stands paralyzed, realizing too late that his toughness was purely theoretical. He is sent flying through the air, swatted aside like a minor annoyance by the creature's immense strength. The monster strikes with terrifying precision, its black appendage piercing through a student who wasn't fast enough. The hoodie girl freezes in shock, witnessing the brutal execution happening inches from her face. The victim collapses at her feet, coughing up blood and gasping his final confused breaths. The creature looms over them, its vertical maw gaping open as the black sphere pulses with dark energy. Hongjin grabs the blonde girl's arm, yanking her away from the scene just as the monster prepares to strike again. At the doorway, Eason and the girl hesitate, terrified to leave Hongjin behind in the slaughterhouse. But Hongjin turns back toward the danger, shouting that he'll figure something out while acting as the distraction. Hongjin decides that a suicidal distraction is better than doing nothing, shouting to draw the beast's gaze. He hurls a borrowed item past the fleeing hoodie girl, startling her more than the monster. Even in the face of death, she finds the time to scold him for throwing her expensive gear. The male student who defended her earlier stares in horror, his bravery evaporating instantly. The lanky nightmare looms over the frozen students, its shadow casting a long pall of death. The defender boy scrambles backward on the floor, his voice cracking as he begs everyone to run. One girl shuts her eyes tight, chanting that it's all a dream as the black tendrils reach for her. A pair of feet plant firmly on the ground, interrupting the slaughter with a sudden intervention. A male student charges in with a taser, screaming a battle cry that's equal parts bravery and terror. But his heroic moment hits a snag when he realizes the monster isn't reacting like a normal human. The creature swats the hoodie girl aside like a fly, sending her tumbling through the air. Chaos erupts as the beast lashes out, its limbs moving with a speed that blurs into violence. The boy with the glasses coughs up blood, the impact of the attack shattering his ribs. Students scatter in every direction, the roof becoming a slaughterhouse of panic and blood. The monster's hand descends with grim precision, snatching a frozen girl by the head. Before anyone can scream, the jaws snap shut, silencing her pleas in a gruesome instant. Hongjin watches with wide eyes, the reality of their helplessness crushing down on him. The silhouette of the beast consuming its prey is etched against the red sky, a portrait of pure horror. The boy with the taser stands trembling, the weapon vibrating in his grip as his nerve fails. The monster turns its eyeless gaze toward him, the black sphere pulsing with a new hunger. Fear wins the tug of war, and the taser slips from his sweating fingers to clatter on the concrete. But the hoodie girl isn't done yet, sliding desperately across the ground to reclaim the weapon. The injured boy watches from the floor, unable to comprehend why she's running toward death. The creature swallows its previous meal with a sickening gulp, ready for the next course. With tears in her eyes and adrenaline in her veins, the girl charges the towering nightmare. She screams a final curse, thrusting the sparking device forward with everything she has left. The taser connects, dumping thousands of volts of blue electricity directly into the monster's flesh. The beast freezes, the black sphere vibrating violently as it emits a strange, garbled sound. But instead of falling, the creature's head explodes outward in a terrifying array of black spikes. The girl stares up in paralyzed shock, realizing that her attack only made the monster angrier. Massive black spikes slam into the concrete, turning the rooftop into a deadly game of hopscotch. A hand reaches out amidst the falling debris, a desperate attempt to snatch life from the jaws of death. The hoodie girl stares up through the cage of shadows, fully expecting this to be her final view of the sky. Her friend screams her name, Ji Sulgi, his voice cracking with the terror of watching her about to die. The blue sky is sliced by black lines, a beautiful backdrop for a gruesome end that never comes. Instead of a death blow, she finds herself shielded by Kim Eason, who has thrown himself into the line of fire. Eason pants heavily, the realization that he almost just became a shish kebab sinking in. Hongjin scrambles over, checking if his friend is still in one piece or if he needs to start looking for spare parts. A crater smokes in the concrete nearby, a silent testament to exactly how close that shave was. Hongjin jumps out of his skin as Sulgi moves behind him, his nerves clearly shot to pieces. Isun screams at them to stop bonding and start running as the monster behind them begins to change shape. The creature's head detaches and spins, transforming into a grotesque organic radar dish. Hongjin helps Sulgi limp away, noticing that the monster seems momentarily stunned by its own evolution. Sulgi asks why he's helping her, clearly confused by acts of altruism during the apocalypse. At the door, Isun waves frantically, trying to herd the cats before the predator wakes up. But his face falls as he looks past them, realizing that their window of opportunity just slammed shut. The monster's neck elongates with a sickening sound, its head snaking through the air like a seeking missile. Isun mutters a curse, accepting that the situation has officially gone from run to prey. He screams for Hongjin to hurry, watching the nightmare loom directly behind his oblivious friends. Frustration boils over, and Isun decides that if they won't move fast enough, he'll make them. The monster lashes out, a black tentacle whipping forward to skewer the stragglers. Isun lunges forward, grabbing Hongjin by the collar with a look of desperate determination. His eyes burn with intensity as he prepares to violate several safety regulations regarding throwing people. With a violent heave, he flings both Hongjin and Sulgi through the doorway, clearing the kill zone. They crash onto the stairwell floor in a heap of limbs and confusion. Isun slams the heavy metal door shut, his hand gripping the knob like a lifeline. The lock clicks into place, sealing the horror outside just as a heavy impact shakes the frame. Isun leans against the metal, sliding down as the adrenaline leaves his body in a trembling rush. The surviving students stare at him in awe, realizing that the delinquent just saved their lives. Isun catches his breath and immediately starts complaining, reminding everyone that he voted for the auditorium. Isun sits on the floor, asking where the first wave of cowards went, while the girl explains they already bolted. Hongjin turns to his friend, checking if Isun's legs are still functional or if he needs to be carried like a princess. A sudden mechanical click from the door handle freezes Hongjin in his tracks, his blood running cold. Isun scrambles backward in a panic, realizing the thing on the other side is trying to get in. The blonde girl trembles, desperately asking for confirmation that the lock will hold against a nightmare. Below them, Sulgi's friend cowers under the railing, screaming at the upperclassmen to stop loitering and start running. Hongjin stares at the metal slab, a terrible thought crossing his mind. What if it's a survivor knocking? The guilt washes over him as he realizes that by locking the door, he might have just sentenced a classmate to death. Isun grabs him, shouting that there were no survivors left on that roof to save. He screams that he saw everyone die, his voice cracking as he tries to snap Hongjin out of his moral crisis. The debate ends abruptly as the door explodes outward, showering the stairwell in sparks and debris. Sulgi stares at the destruction, her voice barely a whisper as she gives the only advice that matters. The group abandons all dignity and sprints down the stairs, terror lending wings to their feet. Behind them, the heavy metal door groans under a massive impact, warping like a piece of tinfoil. They stumble down the steps, shouting conflicting plans about heading to the auditorium while trying not to trip. The door is finally ripped from its hinges, spinning through the air with terrifying velocity. It smashes into the wall right next to them, embedding itself in the concrete like a thrown shuriken. Hongjin and Isun look back at the wreckage, realizing they were inches away from being flattened. Dust swirls around the empty doorframe, framing a view of the bright blue sky that feels mocking now. Through the gap, the rooftop is visible, a silent tableau of the massacre they just escaped. Bodies lie scattered across the green surface, a grim reminder that the rescue team is definitely not coming. A pair of cold, dead eyes peek over the threshold, scanning the stairwell for the ones that got away. Back on the roof, the gray-haired bully and his lackey cower behind an AC unit, praying they've been forgotten. The lackey asks if it's gone, but the bully peeks over the metal box and curses their luck. The monster stands tall amidst the corpses, a long black spine trailing from its back like a macabre tail. The bully watches through the railing, confused by the creature's strange, jerky movements. A gray hand reaches up, the fingers twitching with an unnatural, predatory energy. The monster suddenly punches the wall again, venting its frustration on the architecture. The bullies jump out of their skins, realizing that hiding behind a metal box might not be the ultimate defense. The creature begins to squeeze its lanky frame through the doorway, deciding that the chase is still on. Isun freezes, realizing that a standard school door isn't exactly rated for monster containment. A gray hand punches through the railing, proving that the creature is still very much on the hunt. The lanky nightmare stalks the balcony, muttering gibberish while the bullies cower beneath a vent. Eason prays for the creature to lose interest, his face a mask of pure desperation. They stare at the shattered doorway, realizing their barrier was about as effective as wet paper. The group huddles in the stairwell, wondering why the monster hasn't stormed in to finish the job. Eason suggests the multi-purpose room, hoping soundproof doors might actually stop a supernatural killer. A new student appears on the stairs, looking surprisingly calm given the apocalypse unfolding around them. Hongjin and Eason exchange confused glances, neither of them recognizing the confident stranger. Meanwhile, miles away, a middle-aged man starts his car, reciting a desperate prayer for protection. He grips the wheel with white knuckles, begging for the courage to survive the day. His car speeds through the streets, the engine roaring against the eerie silence of the city. But as he approaches the school, a terrifying silhouette crouches in the grass, waiting for a visitor. The man's prayer dies in his throat as he spots the monstrosity guarding the school gates. He forces himself to keep driving, chanting his mantra as if faith alone can deflect giant teeth. He floors the accelerator, deciding that ramming the gate is his only option. His eyes widen in shock as he realizes the obstacle ahead isn't just a gate, but a living nightmare. In the rearview mirror, the creature launches itself with terrifying speed, closing the distance instantly. The driver screams in primal terror, identifying the beast as a demon straight from hell. The car swerves violently, tires screeching as he tries to outmaneuver a predator that defies physics. The impact slams his head against the wheel, the world spinning into a dizzying blur. Metal crunches against wood as the vehicle wraps itself around a tree, steam hissing from the ruined engine. Dazed and bleeding, he clutches his head, the pain momentarily distracting him from the greater danger. He looks up through the shattered windshield, his blood freezing as he sees what's coming. His eyes lock onto the threat, realizing that his car offered zero protection against this level of horror. He checks the mirror again, panic spiking as the monster vanishes from his line of sight. The answer comes from above as the lanky creature leaps from the tree with predatory grace. It lands on the hood with a heavy thud, the metal buckling under its unnatural weight. A long, shadow-like blade extends from its body, poised to strike like an executioner's axe. The blade descends in a frenzy of violence, piercing the car repeatedly to ensure nothing inside survives. Outside, the gray-haired bully and his crew scramble into an alleyway, their earlier arrogance replaced by frantic survival instincts. He screams at his lackeys to wait, realizing that running blindly is a great way to end up as a monster's chew toy. A girl with round glasses watches them panic, confused as the bully rants about the monster bastard blocking their path. Heavy footsteps shake the ground as the lanky nightmare lands nearby, its impact sending tremors through the pavement. The creature ignores the fleeing students, marching purposefully toward the fleshy mound sitting on the soccer field. The round glasses girl hides behind a pillar as another student sprints past, urging her to run while she stays frozen in curiosity. She peeks around the corner, realizing with a chill that the lanky monster isn't attacking the mound, but protecting it. The two monstrosities sit together on the pitch, a grotesque family reunion amidst the ruins of the school. Inside the building, the survivors reach the heavy double doors of the multi-purpose room, hoping it's a fortress and not a tomb. The blonde girl peeks through the gap, her voice trembling as she prays the room is empty of anything with teeth. The coast is clear, and the room stands silent and unoccupied, offering a brief respite from the chaos. Hongjin and Eason slide down the wall, their bodies finally registering the exhaustion of the sprint and the trauma. Seulgi checks the doors, noting with a frown that the locking mechanism is broken and useless. Eason points out that a lock wouldn't stop a monster that treats concrete walls like wet tissue paper anyway. The blonde girl suggests a makeshift barricade, proposing they jam a broom through the handles to buy time. A student with short hair and glasses asks if they even have a broom, his voice sounding hollow and detached. He stares into space, his mind struggling to process the sheer scale of the horror they've just witnessed. Looking at his trembling hand, he wonders if this is all a hallucination, unable to accept the reality of the slaughter. A knocking sound snaps him out of his trance, and he turns to see Seulgi staring at him with intense focus. She asks the question that's been bothering her. How did he know a monster was going to appear before it happened? She clarifies that he predicted a student would turn into a monster, a detail too specific to be a lucky guess. The boy flinches, clearly uncomfortable with being singled out as the expert on monster biology. He admits he's seen it before, witnessing another person undergo the gruesome transformation firsthand. He describes a black sphere appearing above the victim's head, marking them for death like a cursed halo. Eason jumps in, confirming that the lanky monster on the roof had the exact same accessory floating above it. The boy continues, listing the symptoms. The face turns pale, and the victim starts trembling and muttering incoherently. The other survivors listen in horror, realizing the apocalypse comes with a diagnostic checklist. When asked about the criteria for selection, the boy shakes his head, assuming it's just a cruel, random lottery. Eason rubs his chin, recalling the behavior of the victim on the roof just before the change. He confirms the symptoms match perfectly: extreme cold and anxiety. While Seulgi summarizes the deadly prognosis, the blonde girl sits in heavy silence, wondering just how many of those things are roaming the halls. Hongjin voices the darker fear, noting that while external monsters are bad, an internal infection would be a death sentence. Eason nods in agreement, admitting that the exact same grim thought had been crossing his mind. The knowledgeable student advises everyone to be transparent about any cold flashes or anxiety, essentially asking for a voluntary quarantine. The blonde girl hesitates, terrified of what the group might do if she admits to feeling even a little bit off. Eason states the obvious survival plan, claiming that if someone turns, they just have to run like hell. But Seulgi interrupts with a colder, more pragmatic solution that stops the room cold. Her eyes darken as she suggests that they need to eliminate the threat before the transformation is even complete. The tension is broken by the glasses boy on the floor, who awkwardly brings up the pressing issues of bathrooms and starvation. The blonde girl admits that biology doesn't pause for the apocalypse, and she actually needs to go right now. She asks for permission to leave, her fear of the hallway warring with her physical needs. Hongjin points toward the door, trying to sound confident that a quick trip nearby won't result in death. But his reassurance isn't enough, and she immediately backpedals, deciding that holding it is better than dying. Eason steps up with a sigh, deciding to check the hallway himself since they can't hide in there forever. Seulgi watches him with wide eyes, asking if opening the door is really the smartest move right now. Eason insists they have to let the girl use the facilities, playing the hero despite the obvious danger. His hand grips the handle tight, his knuckles white as he prepares to breach their sanctuary. From the outside, the multi-purpose room doors stand ominously silent against the gray hallway. Eason cracks the door just a sliver, peering into the corridor with the stealth of a thief. His eye widens as he spots something massive occupying the floor space just a few feet away. A colossal, spiked monstrosity is sleeping right in the middle of the hallway, blocking any hope of a bathroom break. Eason turns back to the group with a pale face, politely asking Hongjin to come over and witness the nightmare. He presses a finger to his lips, his eyes screaming a warning that absolute silence is the only thing keeping them alive. The blonde girl watches in confusion as Eason practically vibrates with suppressed terror. The glasses boy starts to panic, assuming the rooftop monster has tracked them down to their hiding spot. Hongjin freezes, his ears picking up a strange, wet noise coming from the other side of the wall. Sweat beads on his face as he realizes the sound is getting closer, and it's definitely not human. Suddenly, a mass of sharp, organic spikes erupts through the doorway, shattering the wood like shrapnel. The blonde girl screams in panic, demanding to know why they haven't barricaded the door yet. Eason stands frozen before the breach, his name being called out as the reality of their situation crashes down. The glasses-wearing student stammers in disbelief, announcing that the monstrosity outside has somehow transformed into a human. Hongjin stares at the door, trying to process the absurdity of a monster hitting the undo button on its evolution. He turns to the group with a look of pure confusion, asking if anyone else is seeing this impossible twist. Skeptical of the miracle, Hongjin demands verification, refusing to bet their lives on a hallucination. Seulgi steps up to the gap in the shattered door, peering through with the caution of someone expecting a jump scare. On the hallway floor, the deadly spikes have receded, revealing an unconscious student entangled in the organic debris. The glasses student calls out to Seulgi, his voice trembling as he asks for confirmation that it's actually a person. Seulgi confirms the visual, though she grimly notes that looking human doesn't necessarily mean he's alive. She squints at the figure, noting the strange infection marks and recognizing the tracksuit as a school uniform. Panic instantly sets in for the blonde girl and the glasses student, who immediately worry that the infection is contagious. The glasses student slumps to the floor, wrestling with the heavy realization that the monster might still be a living classmate. Seulgi and Hongjin look down at him, the silence in the room growing heavy with the unspoken moral dilemma. Hongjin stares at him with dread, realizing the boy is about to suggest a rescue mission that could get them all killed. The student raises a finger, citing zombie movie logic about rare individuals who possess natural antibodies. Hongjin looks at him like he's lost his mind, wondering if this is really the time for film criticism. Undeterred, the boy argues that if someone resisted the transformation, they might hold the key to a cure for everyone. Silgi pauses, her expression shifting as she realizes that his movie-fueled rambling actually contains a grain of logic. She clarifies that the antibody theory is a stretch, but the fact that the monster reverted proves the process isn't permanent. The blonde girl catches on, realizing that if they study this person, they might learn how to turn monsters back into people. Hongjin sighs deeply, accepting that their survival might depend on saving the very thing that tried to kill them. The glasses student points excitedly, validated that his zombie trivia has finally found a practical application. Silgi points back, emphasizing that if they're going to play hero, they need to do it before the cure bleeds out. The glasses student nods, the gravity of the decision settling over the group like a heavy blanket. The sign above the door looms, marking the boundary between their temporary safety and the unknown danger of the hallway. At the door, the students hesitate, whispering fears that this might be a trap set by a very intelligent monster. The blonde girl's eyes dart around in terror, every shadow looking like a set of jaws waiting to snap. They step into the hallway, moving with the synchronized awkwardness of a group that really doesn't want to be there. Hongjin reiterates the golden rule of horror movies. Anyone who wanders off alone is volunteering to die. The glasses student and Silgi take point, keeping a wary eye on the unconscious boy in case he decides to wake up hungry. He checks on Silgi's injury, knowing that a limp could turn a rescue mission into a double funeral. The student lies entangled in a bed of organic spikes, looking less like a survivor and more like a gruesome art installation.
Isin, ever the brave leader, encourages Hongjin to be the one to poke the sleeping bear since he's standing closer.
Hongjin shoots him a glare, thinking that friendship really shouldn't involve being used as a human mind detector. He reaches out with a trembling hand, fully expecting the corpse to snap his fingers off. The tension is thick enough to cut as Silgi and Isin watch, ready to abandon him at the first sign of movement. Isin decides they need a backup plan and tells Silgi to ready the stun gun she used on the roof. Silgi casually reveals that she left their only defensive weapon behind, which is exactly what you want to hear in a crisis. Hongjin interrupts the panic by pulling the taser from his pocket, revealing he snagged it during the escape. Silgi is relieved, mostly because that little gadget cost more than her entire wardrobe. But Isin takes one look at the cracked casing and orders him to throw it away immediately. Hongjin argues it might still work, but Silgi points out that a broken taser is just a self-electrocution device. Isin demands the device and Hongjin hands it over, confused by the sudden urgency. Isin winds up and hurls the broken electronics directly at the unconscious student. It bounces off the body with a dull thud, serving as a very expensive stick poke. Hongjin stares in disbelief, while Isin claims he's just checking for reflexes in the safest way possible. Since the body didn't explode, Isin steps up to check for a pulse, ordering the others to stay back. Silgi ignores the order and creeps closer, her curiosity overriding her survival instincts. They spot the nameplate on the uniform, realizing this potential monster is just a first-year student. A hand reaches for the neck, fingers trembling as they search for the rhythm of life. Isin reads the name Choi Tae-won and recognizes the tracksuit connecting the dots to a familiar face. Silgi's eyes widen as she leans in, sensing something wrong before she even sees it. Isin realizes he knows this kid, or at least knows of him, which makes the situation infinitely worse. A memory flashes of Tae-won laughing with friends, just a normal kid who didn't deserve this fate. Isin prays for a heartbeat, hoping that the bright student hasn't been completely erased by the infection. But the prayer is answered by a pair of hollow black eyes snapping open in a mask of cracked skin. Silgi freezes, staring directly into the void where a human soul used to be. A gray hand shoots up, gripping her hoodie with a strength that is terrifyingly inhuman. Hongjin lunges forward as Silgi is yanked off balance by the awakening nightmare. The student bolts upright, gasping for air and cursing in confusion, while Isin screams that he's turning. Hongjin drags Silgi back as the boy continues his workout, shouting deliriously that he has 4 more reps to go. Silgi struggles to breathe, realizing the boy's grip is fueled by a terrifying, delirious strength. She and Hongjin scream his name in unison, desperate to reach the human buried somewhere beneath the madness. At the doorway, Isin and the blonde girl shout for them to hurry, terrified that the noise will attract something worse. Isin stands paralyzed by the door, the name Choi Tae-won echoing in his mind like a funeral bell. The rescuers back away as Tae-won thrashes violently, his body fighting a losing war against the roots binding him. He kicks wildly at the empty air, sobbing and begging for help as the fear of death overwhelms his senses. The frantic movements begin to slow, his limbs growing heavy as the last of his energy flickers out. Hongjin watches in horror, witnessing the exact moment the fight leaves the boy's body. Seolgi stares in stunned silence, the name dying on her lips as the light fades from his eyes. His legs drop to the floor with a heavy thud, the struggle ending as abruptly as it began. Choi Taewon lies motionless in his thorny cage, his hollow black eyes staring at nothing while roots choke the life from his mouth.